I died. And the most insulting part was that even at my funeral, no one cried for the right reasons. Lilies pressed their sweetness against the room until it felt like I was breathing through candy. The funeral home had chosen soft gold lighting that pretended to be mercy. The walls wore mirror panels that stretched the space and multiplied the flowers into a garden of glass. I lay perfectly arranged in pearl silk. Apparently I'd liked minimalism in the end, news to me. And the air conditioning whispered across my cheeks like I was still a person who could feel. "Keep the service short," Daniel said to the director, voice even, suit immaculate. Of course my ex-husband looked like a brochure for successful grief. His tie was a shade of navy that made his eyes colder. She wouldn't have wanted a fuss. I almost sat up. I most certainly would have wanted a fuss. Balloons, cake, a tasteful slideshow of my best angles. Auntie Mina, who always spoke like a stage whisper was a secret, leaned toward another relative. "Do we know what happens to her apartment?" She breathed. "Rent in that building is..." Her hands pinched the air. "Absurd." "Prenup?" Someone else murmured. "What a tragedy," Sophie said, stepping into my mirror garden like a swan that had been coached by Instagram. She hugged Daniel long enough for his jaw to clench. "You must be devastated." On her face she wore sympathy, a soft mouth, the gleam of useful tears. But in the long strip of mirror above my casket, her reflection blinked with something sharp and bright. It was like the glass peeled back a layer. Beneath the concern was a quick thrill. There and gone. A flash of goldfish joy. I was only mostly dead, apparently, that came with benefits. The mirrors let me see what the world edited out. Daniel didn't notice. He never did. "Thank you for handling the flowers," he said, eyes moving over the arrangements as if evaluating their market potential. Irritation flickered at his temple, the smallest twitch. He wasn't mad about me being gone, he was mad about the calendar. I need to reschedule the foundation dinner, and the investor breakfast. "You can postpone," Sophie murmured, hands smoothing the lapels of his grief like she hoped to iron herself into the fabric. In the mirror, the gleam in her eyes widened, a tiny sunrise. "People will understand. Investors don't understand anything but numbers." "You poor thing," she said. And in the reflection she looked at my casket the way you look at a door you're glad has finally closed. A laugh rose in me, light and wrong, like bubbles in a glass of the cheap champagne Daniel hated. Apparently my corpse was a scheduling conflict. "Good to know." The director cleared his throat. "We're ready to begin." Chairs squeaked, bodies settled. The room hushed into a hopeful silence, as if grief could be heard better when it stood alone. I stared up past the veiled edge of my own lashes at the mirror ceiling where lilies repeated into forever. And then something impossible happened. A line of pale light inked itself across the air. It floated just above my flowers, letters forming with patient certainty. No one else flinched, but my heart, if I still had one, hit the brakes. Second attempt. Avenge or forgive. The words hung there like a verdict only I could read. Thin strokes humming with a sound I felt more than heard. My first thought, this is tacky, even for a funeral, arrived at the same time as a tremor under my sternum. A test? A hallucination? The after-sales pitch of the universe? I looked at Daniel, at the clean line of his mouth already calculating his pivot speech for the foundation board. I looked at Sophie, at the way her hand stayed a second too long on his sleeve. At how the mirror caught her smile clipping onto her face like jewelry. The room exhaled lilies. Behind the scent, there was the faint bite of cleaning fluid, a note as sharp as truth. Avenge or forgive. A smarter, kinder woman would have chosen forgiveness and ascended into enlightened clouds. Another version of me, the one who used to hold my breath when Daniel entered a room hoping love would return my color, might have picked revenge and burned everything down. I thought of my grandmother's hands, strong from years turned into bread and stories. "Balance is a stubborn thing," she'd said once, kneading dough. "It finds you whether you want it or not." "Both," I said, only in my head, and the word clicked like a key in a lock. The light split. For a breath, the letters multiplied in the mirrors. Second attempt echoed. Endlessly, sentences bending and rippling and folding over each other. The air thickened. The lilies grew brighter and then too bright. The gold light washed to white. Somebody, somewhere far away, asked if the program pamphlets had the right date. The date dissolved. Glass sang. Not shattered. Sang. as if the room had been one bell waiting for a fingertip. My body, which had been dutifully still, warmed from the inside. In the reflection above me, the pearl silk loosened into water. The casket drifted like a boat. I fell, forward, backward, inward. The mirrors swallowed me. And then, air rushes my lungs. The first gasp is greedy, surprised, almost rude. Sunlight lands on my face, hot and confident as if it owns me. I choke on it and laugh at once. A ceiling fan hums lazily above me. It is not the ceiling fan of a tasteful funeral home. It is mine. The wobbly, slightly off-kilter fan I'd complained about and never fixed. The room smells like oranges and an old paperback left too long open. My bedroom. I jackknife up so fast the world tilts. My heart is not a metaphor, it's busy. It throws itself against my ribs like it's late to something important. On the nightstand, my phone, face down. I flip it over with a hand that trembles and doesn't feel like wax. The lock screen blooms to life, bright and rude. Thursday. The date, a year before my funeral. I don't realize I'm crying until a tear drops into the corner of my mouth, salty and unfamiliar. I scrub it away with the heel of my palm and catch my reflection in the wardrobe mirror across the room. I look like the version of me who still wore oversized t-shirts and optimism to bed. My hair is an untamed argument. My eyes are too wide. Behind my face, in the mirror's depth, something shivers. It's like the glass wants to speak but hasn't learned my language yet. Okay, I say to the room, to the mirror, to the breath that won't calm down. My voice is hoarse but alive. It's a good sound. Okay. I slide my feet to the floor. The hardwood is warm from the sun. Form follows function, legs, check, ankles, attached, toes, still unimpressive. When I stand, the fan's shadow lays it slow, turning cross over my chest as if blessing me or marking a target. There's laughter outside. The neighbor kids playing a game where they pretend to lose and howl about it. My window throws rectangles of light on the floor the way it always did around 10 in the morning. 10 in the morning wasn't a time that existed at my funeral. It exists here. That's enough proof for now. I move to the mirror. My reflection follows with a half-second lag I'm not sure I imagined. If I concentrate, the surface gleams a fraction brighter, as if the sun has learned how to keep secrets. Second attempt, I whisper. The glass does not write back. Good. The universe has already made its point. I press my palm lightly to the mirror. Cool. Solid. My pulse stutters against my wrist, music loud enough to dance to. My face in the glass is mine, but behind my eyes there's a sharp, new clarity, the kind you get after crying in a bathroom and deciding to return to the party anyway. The party, in this case, is my life. On cue, my phone buzzes with a calendar alert. Meeting, Daniel's office, noon. My stomach drops with old habit, and then steadies. I inhale, exhale, taste oxygen like it's an expensive dessert. This is the morning before the beginning of the end. The meeting where Daniel will smile and tell me about his exciting direction, where he'll say we but mean me, where I will nod because I want to be supportive and small, where he will mention a consultant named Ash Wu and a temporary cash flow shuffle, where Sophie will text an invitation to drinks, and I'll say yes because loyalty and love have the same handwriting in my head, not this time. In the mirror, the sun brushes the corner of my mouth, and I see it, a flicker, a tiny tilt of light that's less reflection and more reveal, the same way Sophie's smile had unbuttoned at the edges at my funeral. The glass is a rude friend now, honest in a way no one asked for. Both, I say again, softly. Vengeance and forgiveness are two doors in the same hallway. I intend to walk through each without taking off my shoes. I pad to the kitchen. The citrus bowl is ridiculous, overflowing, because last week I thought a fruit lifestyle would fix my personality. I peel an orange. It sprays my wrist with a tiny starburst of oil. The smell hits like a promise. Bright, uncomplicated, alive. My phone buzzes again. Morning, Lia. Coffee later? It's Sophie's text, time-stamped last night. Tiny hearts lined up like stepping stones. In my head, her voice is already warm and concerned. In the mirror above the sink, the stainless steel shows me my own mouth crooked into a smile that is nothing like nice. Coffee sounds great. I practice to the empty room, and the ceiling fan applauds with its soft, cyclical whir. I say it again, sweeter, then sharper, tuning my voice to a frequency I've never used. one that doesn't tremble. Back in the bedroom, I pull open the curtains and let the sunlight rush the floor like a crowd. I roll my shoulders. Bones locate themselves. Muscles wake. My heartbeat steadies into something that could be a drumline if I let it. I check the time, 2 hours until Daniel's office. 2 hours until the first move. I look into the mirror one more time, and this time, my reflection doesn't lag. It meets me, measure for measure, eyes level, mouth set. "Let's begin," I tell the girl in the glass. She nods back like she knows I mean it. By the time I stopped shaking, the morning had already crawled past 10. My phone kept vibrating with reminders from a life that technically hadn't happened yet. 1 year. Exactly 1 year before my funeral. Before the betrayal. It felt like standing on a bridge that had already collapsed once and been rebuilt overnight. The wood looked the same. The air smelled the same. But the drop below was waiting, patient as gravity. I showered, dressed, and stared at the version of myself in the mirror above the sink. My hair was damp, my face still a little pale, but my eyes had changed. Not the color, they were the same tired brown, but the way they carried focus, sharp as glass after a break. Today was the first step, and I would not trip in the same place twice. Daniel's office lived on the 23rd floor of a building that liked pretending it was more important than it was. Frosted glass walls, furniture in monochrome palettes, a lobby that smelled like espresso and ambition. He looked up when I entered, his smile practiced enough to be in a brochure. "Lia?" he said, rising from behind his desk. He wore a dark suit perfectly fitted with the tie slightly loosened, an approachable touch for the man who liked control too much. "You look great." I let him kiss my cheek. The contact was brief, polite, the way he did everything except business deals. "Morning," I said, tone light, neutral. My reflection in the glass wall to the left of his desk stared back at me. Behind Daniel's shoulder I caught it, a shimmer, faint but there. In the mirrored surface his smile didn't reach his eyes. Something cold sat there instead, calculating and bored. The real Daniel kept talking. "You okay? You seemed a little off in your text earlier." Off. Right. Because coming back from the dead makes one's tone tricky. "I'm fine," I said. My reflection smiled wider than I did, like it knew the punchline first. He glanced at his computer screen, scrolling through numbers with the same focus. He used when choosing wine, interested only in the label, not the taste. "I have some exciting developments," he said. "A consultant's coming in this week. Financial restructuring, new partnerships. It's going to be huge for us." Us. The word fell between us like a chipped coin. "That's great," I said. He didn't notice the pause. Sophie showed up that afternoon with flowers and a smile she had clearly rehearsed in the elevator mirror. She swept into my apartment like it was a stage entrance. Perfume first, voice second. "Lia," she sang, dropping her bag on the couch like we lived in a commercial for friendship. "How are you feeling? You've been so busy lately." I stepped aside to let her in. The apartment smelled like coffee and the vanilla candle I lit out of habit. Big windows spilled sunlight across the hardwood floor, catching in the frames of the 3 mirrors hung along the hallway wall. Sophie hugged me with arms that squeezed just long enough to be noticed. "I'm fine," I said. She pulled back to look at me. Her real face was all concern and warmth. But in the hallway mirror behind her, her reflection tightened at the mouth, eyes, flicking over my living room like she was cataloging it for future possession. "Interesting." She set the flowers on the table. "Daniel says things at the office are crazy right now. All those investors. All that money moving around. I told him he works too hard." In the reflection, irritation flashed sharp as a fishhook when she said investors. "Ah," I thought, "so that's the story you tell yourself." I smiled, sweet as the vanilla candle. "We'll have to catch up properly," she said. "Just us girls." Of course. My tone was friendly, my reflection's smirk was not. 2 days later, I met Ash Wu. Daniel introduced him in the conference room, where the walls were glass and the table was metal, and everything about the place felt designed to make people feel small. "Lia, this is Ash," Daniel said. "He's going to help streamline our finances. Big things coming." Ash Wu was taller than I expected, with the kind of posture that suggested he didn't care whether you looked at him or not. Dark hair, neat suit, eyes that carried a trace of amusement even when his expression stayed polite. Pleasure, he said, shaking my hand. His voice was smooth, unhurried. And then he looked at me like he knew something. Not just in the way strangers sometimes look too long, but like he'd been waiting to see whether I recognized him from a dream I didn't remember having. The moment stretched, quiet but not empty. Likewise, I said finally. Daniel launched into a speech about projections and partnerships, numbers marching across the screen behind him. Ash nodded at all the right times, asked sharp questions, took notes with precise handwriting. But every so often his eyes drifted back to me with the faintest curve. At the corner of his mouth, like we were in on a joke no one else heard. By the end of the meeting, Daniel was beaming. "This is going to change everything," he said. For once, I believed him. Just not in the way he thought. That night, back in my apartment, I stood in front of the mirror in my bedroom. City lights leaked through the blinds, breaking the reflection into stripes across my face. I thought about Sophie's smile, Daniel's calculations, Ash's knowing eyes. The glass behind my own reflection shivered faintly, as if waiting. 1 year, I said aloud. That's all you get. My reflection's mouth shaped the words with me. No delay this time, no difference. Just the two of us looking out from the same set of eyes, agreeing on something dangerous. This time I wasn't going to lose. By the end of the week, I had a routine: smile at Daniel, nod at Sophie, pretend to be the same woman they remembered. And behind it all, quietly, I collected information the way spiders collect silk, thin threads invisible until you walk through them. Daniel wasn't careless exactly, he just assumed I was harmless. The files on his desk were never locked. His office assistant adored me because I once sent her birthday cupcakes. Passwords lived on sticky notes tucked under paperweights. I learned to photograph quickly with my phone screen dimmed, emails forwarded to a private address I hadn't even owned the first time I lived this year. Every secret looked ordinary if you carried it with the right posture. Sophie made her first mistake on Thursday. We were having lunch in the little cafe across from Daniel's building, the one with floor-to-ceiling windows that turned the city into a moving postcard. She stirred her latte like it was auditioning for a commercial. "So," she said, lashes down, voice casual, "Daniel must be so stressed with all these investors coming in." I nodded. "He works too hard," she went on, like this was news. "Sometimes I tell him he should take a break. Go out, relax." I raised a brow. "Do you?" Her smile flickered. Just for a second. Then she laughed. "Of course. We're friends. That's what friends do." The cafe window showed the reflection of her face tilted toward me, sweet as honey, while her eyes in the glass glittered sharp with something else. She wanted me to ask. She wanted me to open the door so she could walk through it slowly, pretending surprise. I sipped my coffee instead. Ash appeared the next day, leaning against the hallway wall outside Daniel's office like he owned the building. "Careful with that one," he said as I passed. I paused. "Excuse me?" "Your husband," he said lightly, though his eyes didn't match his tone. "He keeps all the accounts tied together. If one goes down, they all do. Not the best structure for security." I studied him. "And you're telling me this because—" He shrugged, a half-smile curving like he knew I didn't believe it was casual. "You look like someone who doesn't like surprises." In the reflection of the glass wall beside him, he wasn't smiling. His face there was serious, almost sympathetic, like the mirror had caught him without his mask. I walked away before I could ask what he wanted in return. That evening, I tested the mirrors properly. Daniel came home late, smelling like the cologne he kept in his office drawer. Sophie texted him while we ate dinner. His phone lit up between bites of pasta. He told me it was work. The hallway mirror told me it wasn't. Reflections didn't speak exactly, they revealed. A faint overlay, like a watermark on reality. Behind Daniel's face I saw a quicksilver flash, Sophie leaning across a bar table, her laugh bright enough to burn. He didn't even notice when I stopped chewing. Saturday, I followed the reflection. Not literally, I wasn't ready to show my hand. But I sat in the cafe with the panoramic windows again, the one where Sophie liked to stage her friendship. The city outside moved in fragments, cars sliding past, pedestrians stitched into the glass by sunbeams. And there, across the street, through another cafe's wide windows, Daniel and Sophie sat close enough for elbows to brush. Their real faces looked innocent enough. Laptops open, coffee cups between them. A meeting. A conversation. Perfectly appropriate. But the reflections in the cafe glass told on them, the way Sophie's smile curved. Too slowly, the way Daniel's hand lingered near hers when he reached for his drink. In the mirror world, they were already guilty. I stirred my coffee and let the city carry on around me. Sunday belonged to my grandmother. Her house always smelled like baked apples and old books, like time had decided to stay for dinner. The wallpaper had been fashionable 40 years ago and refused to apologize for it. She hugged me with arms that still needed bread twice a week. "Too thin," she said, as always, patting my back like dusting flour off her hands. "I'm fine," I told her. "You look like someone reading the last chapter of a book and pretending to enjoy it." I blinked. "That's specific." She shrugged, turning back to the oven. "Life gives you second chances sometimes. Not often. Never a third." The words slipped into me like warm tea. When she pressed the small velvet pouch into my hand, I didn't argue. "For luck," she said. "Though luck only works if you do too." Inside was a simple charm, a piece of polished stone on a red thread, ordinary enough to be anything. Or everything. "Thanks, Grandma." She looked at me then, sharp and kind at once. "Who are you planning to become this time, Lia?" I didn't have an answer yet. That night, I spread the copied files across my bedroom floor, account statements, contracts, quiet little trails of money Daniel thought no one else followed. The mirror above my dresser caught the whole scene, me kneeling among papers like a fortune teller reading futures I hadn't lived yet. I stared at my own reflection, until the room felt too still. The glass didn't show me Sophie or Daniel this time. It showed me myself, smiling a little too sharply. Maybe that was a warning too. Across the city, Sophie was probably telling Daniel I seemed distant lately. Daniel was probably nodding, already thinking about whatever meeting came next. And Ash was a question mark wearing a perfect suit. I touched the charm at my neck. "Second chances," my grandmother said. "Rare things." The mirror didn't disagree. The invitation came from Sophie, of course. "Daniel's investors are throwing a party," she said with the brightness of someone offering a gift wrapped in too much tape. "It'll be fabulous. We should go." "We, not you." I smiled like I didn't hear the claim buried inside the word. The party was at one of those hotels that tried to be modern art all. Glass walls and sharp edges, chandeliers shaped like inverted galaxies. The lobby gleamed in gold and silver, but the ballroom was mirrors. Ceiling to floor, every panel catching light and multiplying it until you didn't know where the real room ended and the reflections began. Perfect. I wore black, not morning black, not cocktail black. Statement black. The kind that made Daniel's eyes flicker with something halfway between confusion and irritation. "You look different," he said when I joined him near the bar. "Do I?" I lifted my glass. "Maybe I am." His smile tightened, the polite one he used on journalists. Sophie arrived moments later in scarlet silk, the kind of dress that announced itself before she spoke. She air-kissed my cheek like we were the oldest, dearest friends. "Darling," she said. The mirror behind her shoulder caught the twitch at the corner of her mouth, when Daniel glanced at me instead of her. Oh, this was going to be fun. I set the stage carefully. A conversation here, a comment there, each mirror waiting like a co-conspirator. Sophie liked attention. No, needed it the way some people need oxygen. So I gave her plenty. Introduced her to people who mattered. Steered her toward the circles that included Daniel. Made sure the light caught her smile when she laughed at his jokes. And the mirrors, well, they told the truth. At first it was subtle, a flicker in the reflection when someone complimented. My dress and Sophie's smile sharpened a fraction too much. A glimmer of irritation when Daniel asked me to dance instead of her. But then one of the investors, tipsy, curious, joked about whether Sophie and Daniel were a couple. In the mirror behind the bar, Sophie's eyes lit up like a struck match before she smoothed her expression into polite surprise. The investor laughed, oblivious. Daniel froze for half a second too long, and the mirror told everyone who bothered to look. Sophie wasn't surprised at all. People notice things when you give them permission to. A tilt of the head, a pause in conversation, a glance toward the glass where Sophie's reflection smiled too wide, too eager, when Daniel wasn't looking. I didn't have to say a word. The room began to watch her for me. By the time Daniel realized people were whispering, it was too late. "Lia," he said sharply. cornering me near the champagne tower. What exactly are you doing? Enjoying the party, I said sweetly. His jaw worked like he was chewing words he couldn't spit out in public. You're different lately, he said finally. It wasn't. He stopped, started again. That wasn't a compliment. It sounded like one. For the first time since I'd met him, Daniel looked unsettled. I liked it. The night tilted after that. Daniel excused himself to take a call, irritation simmering under his skin. Sophie clung to a group of investors who now eyed her like she was part of some off-script drama, which technically she was. And Ash appeared beside me with the timing of someone who either believed in fate or controlled it. Your husband looks tense, he said, handing me a fresh glass of champagne. Ex-husband? I corrected automatically. His brow lifted. News to him? Not yet. He studied me over the rim of his glass. You know he set up a little surprise for you? Financial, not flowers. Hidden clause in one of the joint accounts. I blinked. And you know this because he asked me to design it. Ash smiled faintly. And I didn't. I stared. Why not? He shrugged. I like puzzles. You're more interesting than he is. The mirror behind him showed the same scene but stripped of pretense. His expression there was softer, almost curious, like he saw more than he said. Later, after the party bled into night, I found him outside. The hotel backed onto a small park, one of those city spaces that pretended to be nature. A pond reflecting the streetlights, benches placed like punctuation marks along the path. Thanks for the rescue, I said when we were out of earshot. Ash leaned against the railing, overlooking the water. The wind tugged at his tie, loosened now, his jacket open. He would have drained the account within a month, he said. Left you with the bills. Romantic, I muttered. Predictable, he countered. Men like him always assume loyalty means blindness. The pond below us caught the streetlights in broken lines. My reflection shivered between them, scattered by ripples. You talk like you've seen this before, I said. His smile didn't reach his eyes this time. Let's say I'm familiar with second chances. I turned to look at him. That's a strange way to put it. Is it? His gaze met mine, steady and too knowing. Most people waste theirs. You might not. For a moment the wind was the only thing speaking. Leaves rustled. Water lapped softly at the edge of the pond. Why help me? I asked finally. Ash tilted his head like the question amused him. Why not? In the reflection below, our faces leaned closer than we actually were. The water didn't lie any more than the mirrors did. I stepped back first. When I returned to the ballroom, Sophie was laughing too loudly at something no one else found funny. Daniel was back from his call, jaw tight, eyes scanning the room like it had personally offended him. And me? I smiled. Because the masks were slipping, and for once, I wasn't the one wearing one. The boardroom looked like someone had designed it for intimidation. Glass walls. A table long enough to require its own zip code. Leather chairs lined up like soldiers. Outside, the city stretched in sharp angles and steel gray clouds. I walked in first. Not Daniel. Not Sophie. Me. Daniel was already there, standing near the head of the table in a suit so perfectly pressed it could have cut paper. Sophie hovered at his side in a navy dress, the kind people wear when they want to look respectable. The investors murmured among themselves as I took a seat halfway down the table. Their reflections slid along the glass walls like shadows trying to keep up. Thank you all for coming, Daniel began smoothly. I have some exciting updates. Actually, I said, cutting him off with the kind of smile people use. Before turning over a winning card, I have a few updates of my own. His eyes flicked to me, sharp, questioning. Sophie's fingers tightened around the folder she carried, knuckles pale. I slid the copies across the table, contracts, account statements, emails carefully forwarded to my private account weeks ago. While Daniel's been busy, I said, voice calm enough to unsettle, he's made a few creative decisions with company funds, personal accounts disguised as business expenses, off-the-record meetings, future partnerships that don't include everyone they should. One of the older investors leaned forward, scanning the pages like they were courtroom evidence. Daniel laughed, brittle around the edges. This is absurd. Taken out of context. Really? I tilted my head. Because context seems pretty clear to me. I reached into my bag, pulled out the small tablet I'd borrowed from Ash. One tap, and the wall behind me lit up with a photo, Daniel and Sophie at that. Cafe, leaning close over coffee, her smile too sharp, his hand covering hers. The room went very quiet. The mirrors along the far wall caught Sophie's face as she realized what everyone was seeing. Her reflection didn't bother with the mask she wore in public. It showed the smirk, the ambition, the way she looked at Daniel like he was both ladder and prize. "You manipulated company resources," one of the investors said slowly, eyes on Daniel. "For personal reasons." Daniel's jaw worked like he was chewing nails. "This is a stunt." "Lia's angry, she's twisting." "Then explain the offshore account," I said, sliding another set of papers forward. "The one Sophie has access to." Sophie opened her mouth, closed it again. In the glass wall beside her, her reflection screamed what she didn't. "You were supposed to control this, Daniel." I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. By the time the meeting ended, Daniel's position was under review, which was the polite corporate way of saying pack your things. Sophie didn't wait for the final vote. She left halfway through, eyes bright with humiliated tears, heels clicking like gunshots across marble floors. Her reflection in the hallway glass followed her, smirking all the way out. I didn't stay to watch the aftermath. Ash found me on the rooftop balcony afterward. The city sprawled below like a circuit board lit with gold. Wind pulled at my hair, carrying away the tension that had followed me for months. Maybe years. "Well," he said, leaning against the railing. "That was dramatic." "Was it?" My voice came out steadier than I felt. He glanced at me, eyes catching the city lights. "You ended 2 careers in one afternoon." "They ended themselves," I said. He considered that, then nodded slightly. For a while we stood in silence, watching headlights smear across wet streets below. Finally I asked, "Why tell me about the account? Why help me at all?" Ash rested his elbows on the railing. "Because balance matters. Most people don't notice until it's gone." I frowned. "That's cryptic." He smiled faintly. "I'm good at cryptic. Comes with the job. And your job is?" "Let's say I make sure scales don't tip too far." He paused, eyes on the skyline. "When you died the first time, you forgave Daniel, completely. It tilted things. Too much grace, not enough reckoning. So the chance came back around." I turned to look at him. "You're saying this was some kind of cosmic accounting? Call it what you want." His gaze met mine, steady, unreadable. "You got to choose this time. What to burn, what to keep." I thought about the boardroom, about Sophie's reflection peeling away her charm for everyone to see, about Daniel realizing too late that I wasn't the woman he could control anymore. It tasted like victory. And Ash. "Most people," Ash said quietly, "waste their second chance chasing revenge, until it becomes the only thing they have left." I touched the small charm at my neck, the one my grandmother gave me. "And me? That's up to you." The city wind curled around us, smelling like rain and electricity. I thought about the year I'd lived twice, about the mirrors showing me things I couldn't unsee, about Sophie's ambition, Daniel's greed, my own anger simmering like something alive. Murdering their reputations had felt good. No point lying about that. But standing here now, above the city with its 1,000 glittering windows, I felt something else uncurl in my chest. Possibility, freedom maybe. Ash watched me with that faint, unreadable smile. "So, what will you be now that you're not someone's wife, someone's victim, someone's ghost?" I didn't have the full answer yet, but I knew it wasn't revenge. Not anymore. I turned to the skyline where the lights went on and off like a language only the city understood. "Maybe," I said slowly, "I'll just be someone who owns her own life." The mirrors on the building across from us caught my reflection in the glass. For the first time since this began, it didn't smirk, or warn, or show me anything different. It just looked back. Like we finally agreed. Daniel wanted to meet in person. The email came 3 days after the boardroom disaster. 3 days after his investors had turned their polite smiles into knives, after Sophie's reputation had crumbled in real time. Just one conversation he'd written. For closure. I agreed because I wanted it too. He looked smaller somehow when I saw him. Still in his perfect suit, still smelling like expensive cologne and stress, but smaller. We met in a quiet corner of the company lobby, the morning sun turning the glass walls into sheets of fire. "Lia," he said. Like the word tasted strange now. "Daniel," he cleared his throat. "I didn't expect you to go this far." "I didn't either," I admitted. But then, you underestimated me the first time too. His jaw tightened. I made mistakes. Lots of them, I said lightly. He looked at me then, really looked, like he was trying to find the woman, who used to nod and smile and fold herself small enough to fit his life. She's gone, I said softly. And I'm not bringing her back. The words surprised both of us. Daniel's mouth opened, closed. So that's it? You win? I thought about it, then shook my head. No, I forgive you. His eyes snapped to mine. Not for you, I added. For me. Because I don't want to carry you into my future. The silence after that felt like something breaking quietly. When I walked away, I didn't look back. Sophie left the city the same week. Someone said she was headed west. New job, new name maybe. Her social media vanished overnight like a tent folded after a storm. I didn't follow her story. I didn't need to. The mirrors didn't show her anymore. Ash found me in my grandmother's garden the next morning. The place smelled like rosemary and sun-warmed earth, the air alive with bees, and the soft clatter of wind chimes. My grandmother was pruning roses like they'd personally offended her. You survived, Ash said, leaning against the fence post. Did I asked. He smiled that almost smile of his. More than that. I studied him. You knew this was going to happen. I knew you had a choice, he corrected. Most people pick revenge until it eats them alive. And me? You chose yourself, he said simply. That's rarer than you think. The wind lifted his hair, carried the scent of roses between us. So what now? I asked. Now, he said, you live, however you want. I'm not here to tell you what comes next. There was something in his eyes when he said it. Not pressure. Not demand. Just possibility. Romance, maybe? But the slow kind. The kind that didn't ask for an answer today. I realized I liked that. That afternoon, I noticed the mirrors were quiet. No flickers. No hidden faces. Just reflections, plain and ordinary. For the first time since the funeral that wasn't, the world looked exactly like itself. I didn't miss the magic. 2 days later, Ash and I sat in a tiny cafe with peeling paint and the best coffee in the city. Outside, the world moved fast. Cars, people, rain starting in the distance. But here everything was slow, the clink of cups, the hiss of the espresso machine, the soft hum of conversation. To second chances, Ash said, lifting his cup. I clinked mine against his, and to not wasting them. He smiled, that rare, real smile that reached his eyes this time. My grandmother joined us halfway through, carrying a basket of lemons like she'd grown them herself. She hadn't. She looked at Ash, then at me, then back at him. So when's the wedding? She asked with absolute seriousness. I nearly choked on my coffee. Grandma, Ash didn't miss a beat. We were thinking spring, he said solemnly. She nodded approvingly. Good. I like tulips. I put my head in my hands. You two are impossible. They both looked far too pleased with themselves. But as the sunlight spilled through the cafe windows, warm and ordinary, I realized I was smiling. Not because of revenge. Not because of victory. Because for the first time in a very long time, my life was mine again. And that felt like enough.